Hey, good morning, everyone. Josh of Severe Weather. I am a meteorologist in the Raleigh area. Been on YouTube since December, and welcome to my channel. I will say I am not like all of the other meteorologists that are out there, especially the ones you'll see on TV. I try to do a little bit more than just the very obvious forecasting. I do a lot more long range, and I'm going to be looking at some tropical threats and where things may form. And a lot of it's got to do with what we call our teleconnections. And this is the natural progression of where rising air and sinking air are across the world. There usually is some sort of transport of moisture across the world. We saw tropical activity, which is very busy around Africa and the Indian Ocean back in the spring. And then early in the summer, late spring, all the action started in the Western Pacific. And then as we shifted into midsummer, the Eastern Pacific. And now we are heading towards the end of summer. We're seeing threats in Texas, in the Western Caribbean, and what I believe next will be Florida. And then as we head into September, the East Coast. And there is a natural progression. A lot of it has to do with what's called Kelvin waves, which travel across and increase areas. So the Texas is under the gun right now. The next area under the gun looks like it's going to be Florida, and I'm going to talk about that here. And I realize not a lot of people are talking about it yet in the tropics, but I am of the personal belief that you need to begin to prepare well in advance of any immediate threat. And I think Florida, this is now going to be your chance here in the coming week, heading right up to the beginning of Labor Day holiday weekend. Let me share my screen with you, and you can see three systems on the map of greatest concern. There's more out over the central Atlantic I'm not going to stress about too much. This is now Tropical Storm Harold getting ready to make landfall in deep South Texas. This is actually going to produce some beneficial rain, a weaker system, one that we actually like to see when we do need this rainfall. And then this system is going to be moving up between North Carolina and Bermuda. It's probably actually going to be a little farther east than this when all is said and done. That's going to be the first part of next week. This is Franklin, which is moving into Hispaniola tomorrow and into Thursday, and then likely to become a hurricane some point later this weekend and by early next week, and passing east of the Outer Banks and west of Bermuda. Something we're going to have to watch in New England and in Atlantic Canada, although the average of the models keeps it just offshore those areas. And then the next area to watch is forming over Central America. It's in what's called a gyre, and that is eventually going to send moisture northward through Central America, through the Yucatan, and what I personally believe will be the southern Gulf of Mexico towards the middle of next week. And right now, the upper level pattern favors something moving northeastward towards the northern and eastern Gulf of Mexico, with Florida being kind of in the crosshairs of that. So we're going to keep an eye on it. That one could actually be the eye storm, depending on what happens in the eastern Atlantic. We know eye storms historically have been destructive for the U.S. Ian last year, Ida the year before that, Ivan, Isabel, just a long list of ice storms, which typically, because of the time of the year, favor the eastern United States and the southern United States. Typically, we get that ice storm either later in August or in September, and that is when waters are at their warmest. So I'm going to speculate. And anyway, let's start and look at the map right now. And three storms left on the map. Two of them have already kind of fallen apart. Emily, which could potentially reform here as a weak system, no threat to land. Franklin is a bigger threat to Hispaniola, 50-mile-per-hour winds south of Hispaniola. That is going to be turning right. Where it does so could make a big difference on what's going to happen in Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. There's still some uncertainty on that. Gert kind of wasted a name, to be honest with you. I don't even know how it's still a depression, but I guess the National Hurricane Center doesn't have enough to stress about. So we've got Gert out there. Harold is actually moving quickly and strengthening, although running out of real estate to do so. It's going to be moving into South Texas later this morning. The fifth one could be the eye storm, but I will say, although models were really jumping good on this system, they are now backing off. Wind shear a little bit too strong. That's the same reason Emily has fallen apart. And there is a chance that the next storm, Idalia, Idalia, does not form out of this. This could be a depression, but it may not get Idalia's name. That may be what comes up from Central America into the Gulf of Mexico. There could also be a J storm coming off of the African coast here next week. But again, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself at this point. So let's take a look first at the Gulf of Mexico. You'll notice a few things. Number one, Florida is much drier today. You need that dryness here in Florida. It's going to be a warm day for sure. Then you see the circulation of what's now Tropical Storm Franklin very quickly racing westward towards deep South Texas. And there's enough of a circulation underneath of this for it to be classified a tropical storm. Buoys are showing that kind of wind strength out there, but it's not a very circular system. It's very lopsided with all the business here, mostly on the northern part of it. So where the center crosses the coast this morning, most of the wind and rain is actually going to be worse well to your north. So Port Isabel may be that landfall point, but areas farther north up the coast, say Port Mansfield, Raymondville on up closer to Corpus Christi, may actually end up getting the worst weather as squalls move in. Here's the infrared, and I can show that to you here. Let me pull my pen out for you. I'm using the Zoom app, so it's not very easy to. Here's the circulation right here. You can see all the thunderstorm action is off to the north and west, moving into the bend of Texas. And then we've got quite a bit more behind it off to the north and east. And both of these are kind of generally moving in this direction. So kind of two waves of major rainfall moving into South Texas. So anyway, I'll clear that up for you guys here. Let's look at the radar from Radar Omega. You could see that circulation center is still off the coast of Texas. This video is at 5 a.m. Central. Landfall is probably going to be around 9 or 10 in the morning, so only a few more hours to go. And this heavy rain is going to move through Corpus Christi this morning. It's going to spread west from Harlingen over to McAllen and Weslaco and Edinburgh, Texas. And then the next wave is going to push onshore Padre Island here in the next hour or so, then heading towards Port Mansfield and then Raymondville, which does need some rain. I know I've been talking to a few people from around there. And then the main system moves in here later this morning, and that'll bring the heaviest rain this afternoon and probably the gustiest winds as well into this zone in here, north of the lower Rio Grande Valley, in less densely populated areas. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. But the rain is needed for all, to be honest with you guys. It's been such a miserably hot summer. Here's our storm track, and we're likely to see landfall late this morning, sometime between 9 a.m. and noon. That will probably be around 50 mile per hour wind strength. Right now we have 45. It still could strengthen a little bit more. The system could actually tighten up as the anticyclone above it provides some ventilation for the system. So I would not be shocked if it's actually at its strongest point just after landfall, believe it or not. There's not a whole lot of elevation, some swampy areas in here. It could actually still be tightening up even right after landfall. And that momentum is going to carry it across South Texas this afternoon and then into northeastern Mexico tonight. We will see weakening at that point, and the reason why we have the Sierra Madre here, where there could be some tremendous amounts of rainfall. But fortunately, the storm is booking it, moving west-northwest at close to 20 miles per hour. So the flood threat is nothing like what California and Nevada have had. It's going to be just a slight risk for flooding. Generally speaking, less than 6 inches of rain for everybody here. Storm surge could be a bit of an issue, especially north of the storm, around Baffin Bay and Corpus Christi Bay. That's where I think we could see some coastal flooding here, beginning this morning, continuing into the late afternoon hours and relaxing some later tonight. Even all the way up to Sargent, Texas here on the coastal bend, we could see some storm surge issues. You can see the models are all very well behaved. The remains will be heading towards New Mexico, maybe Arizona here underneath our big ridge of high pressure in a few days. At that point, just a cloud swirl, probably not a huge rainmaker. And intensity forecasts, there's still a small window. This could strengthen to about 50 miles per hour, maybe even 60 if everything comes together right at the last minute. But most of these winds are going to be off the coast, and winds will be a little bit weaker here in Texas. Here's a look at our tropical models. You can see that landfall point is going to be around 7 to 8 in the morning here. Pressure's down to 990. Wind speeds up to as much as 60 miles per hour according to this model, which could be a little bit too strong, just to be honest with you guys. And then very quick weakening here this afternoon as the storm tracks north of the Rio Grande River and moves past Zapata into Mexico here this evening. And I apologize if I'm not pronouncing these names right. I did learn Spanish, but like everything else, it seems like you guys probably can be more of a testament to this than I, looking at some of the comments. And that's not an insult. It's just to be honest. We learned a lot of stuff, but we forgot a lot of stuff. So anyway, let's not forget this is going to be a big rainmaker here, according to the HER model. And you can see landfall here around 8, 9 in the morning. And then actually it looks a little bit better and well defined at this point. And then 10 and 11 a.m., a lot of that rain is already going to let up here in deep South Texas, with the heaviest rain on the northern and western side of the system late this morning into the afternoon. If you're in Houston, all you're getting are some cooling clouds, probably nothing more than a sprinkle. I know you're desperate for rain. I was looking at temperatures. I have a lot of friends that work in meteorology as energy meteorologists out there, and I was seeing 108 degrees, I think, over the weekend. At least it wasn't extremely humid, but bad enough, and I won't trade you for that here in Raleigh. We've had some hot days, but nothing of that nature. As we get on into tonight, though, most of the rain is actually already moving into Mexico. We just see a few bands of showers and storms coming up through the bend as we have that transport of moisture on the eastern side of our circulation here this evening. Rain totals from the HRRR model, generally speaking, 2 to 4 inches of rain. Some spots could pick up 5 or 6. This model will sometimes over predict rain, but you can see the heaviest amounts should be west of Laredo across Mexico, where we could see locally up to 10 inches of rain. Galveston up to Houston, though, this is going to be little to nothing for you. Around the coastal bend, generally an inch or less. Corpus Christi, Baffin Bay, probably 2 to 4 inches of rain. San Antonio and on north into the hill country, little to nothing, unfortunately. A cooler day, but a more humid day as well. Here's a look at wind gusts. This is the 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. run of the HRRR model. You can see the strongest winds are off the coast, 60 to as much as 85 mile per hour wind gusts possible. And this would be in like probably waterspouts, just to be honest with you guys, not really from the circulation center. But as we get into the morning, there could be some wind gusts between 50 and 60 miles per hour later this morning in parts of the Rio Grande Valley, mainly places like Raymondville over to Port Isabel and Port Mansfield, and especially up towards Baffin Bay. That's where our strongest winds are going to be. There could be some power outages out of this. These are wind gusts, not sustained winds. Sustained will be in the 40 to 50 mile per hour wind range, but there could be power outages this morning into the early afternoon, possibly even over towards Laredo here and just northward into the afternoon hours. But this is not a big wind baker. Maybe some gusts to 30 to 40 along the I-10 corridor, but nothing really extreme. Now let's talk real quick about GERT, which I'm surprised I'm even going to spend a breath on, but wind shear is still strong, but somehow we've got thunderstorms coming with GERT. Most of the models say it ain't going to last a whole lot longer. If there's a remnant low, it's not going to even make it to the Leeward Islands here. It's going to stay east and kind of loop around here and get squeezed by storms on both sides. And then looking at the rest of the Caribbean, quiet in the Western Caribbean. This is the gyre, though, that I'm watching for you guys here. Let me circle that for you, and you can see it right here. Right now, the system is moving sort of westward, but what's going to happen is we're going to see a trough of low pressure get cut up underneath and turn this in between two ridges of high pressure. One big ridge here over the southeast, the other back to the west of Mexico. What this system wants to do is find that weakness and go in between the two, kind of on the western periphery of this ridge. And there's some model agreement that it's going to happen somewhere in this vicinity here later this weekend into next week. So we may have a system developing in this portion of the Gulf here next week. Naturally, that favors a track towards Florida. But again, that's still more than a week beyond this forecast. So we are going to see probably some changes. But what we see right now is still quite a bit of wind shear from east to west coming out of this weakness here. And underneath this high, you see a little bit of a weakness here, a little bit of an upper level low still. And that is keeping Franklin over here from developing too quickly and unlikely to be a hurricane at this point. It's actually kind of in a weakness where it's stalled. Let me clear this for you guys here and try again here. But it's kind of stalled right now in this general weakness. And once that lifts away, we should see the system start turning back to the north. The big question mark is it going to be over Haiti, or is it going to be over the Dominican Republic, or is it even going to be just west of Haiti into the passage between Cuba and Haiti? But either way, it is likely going to get influenced by this trough and move to the northeast and end up in this area here north of Puerto Rico, east of the Bahamas. After that, the trough lifts away, and we've got some uncertainty in how that occurs. But there should be somewhat of a turn back more to the north and then northwest, taking the track of the storm closer to or even west of Bermuda, not all the way to the east coast, fortunately, at this point, but something we still have to keep an eye on the east coast. Here's the thunderstorm activity, and you can see the center is kind of exposed in here with all of the really deep cloud tops actually south of the center, almost to the Venezuelan coast and to the ABC Islands. I believe this is Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao. Correct me if I'm wrong. But that's where all the really nasty rain is right now. We are seeing some tropical downpours over parts of Hispaniola, but the main part of our storm is still well out to the south. Now, as we head into the afternoon hours, we should see more of a northward motion towards the tip here of Dominican Republic, and there is a tropical storm warning from the tip of Haiti all the way across the south coast to the southeastern tip of Dominican Republic. So the entire southern coast of Hispaniola is under a tropical storm warning. The northern coast of Dominican Republic and also the Turks and Caicos, I believe, are under a tropical storm watch for potential impacts coming later tomorrow into early on Thursday. You see that turn to the right here, taking it northeast of Puerto Rico by the weekend. Once we get past this turn, we start to see more favorable conditions for intensification, and we will likely see a hurricane by the second half of this weekend. Now, this map looks like it's aimed at Bermuda, but we may actually see more of a turn back to the northwest, taking it to the west of Bermuda. You can see this is Bermuda right here. The models are kind of aiming west of Bermuda. The UK Met is the more extreme one, which takes it closer to the Bahamas, whereas everywhere else says it is going to turn back, but eventually try to recurve to the right. Intensity forecasts all keep this as a tropical storm as it moves past Haiti, with the exception of this one model here. I should say past Dominican Republic, I'm sorry. The ship's model, which loves to get too strong with these things, but then we see gradual intensification with a Category 1 or possibly Category 2 hurricane by the first part of next week. All right, now we're going to take a look at the Central Atlantic. This is Gert, not much left of it. This is the remains of Emily, already moved away. And then here's our next disturbance. And looking farther to the east, you can see this disturbance does not look as well organized as it did yesterday. Still a lot of convection with it, but there's an exposed center here. So this is not developing at this point, and I would not be shocked if, actually, this is the remains of Emily. See that little swirl down there? And then here's the outflow from Gert, which is still barely a depression, and all of this wind shear is going to be in the way of the system, keeping it from developing. We do have more waves that are coming across Africa, one right here, but these do not look like they're going to develop anytime soon. So at this point, I don't really see anything really developing. This circulation here could rally together and become a quick depression, but I don't think that's really going to happen at this point anymore. I thought it would yesterday, but watching the last 24 hours, I just don't see it happening. So anyway, we're going to keep an eye on that. Let's get back to Franklin here. You can see hurricane force on all of these ensembles. One of them takes it closer to the East Coast than we would like to see, but not close enough to be an immediate threat. Sorry, I mixed up the order here. The Ensemble Prediction Center even says this is going to go by to the east. I'm sorry, the EPS, it's Ensemble Prediction System. This is the European ensembles. Takes everything even south and east of Nova Scotia and PEI, and actually has landfall in Newfoundland here towards the second part of next week. All right, so here's a look again at that disturbance. Sorry for jumping around on you guys. And it just doesn't look like it's going to organize anytime soon. So anyway, that's where we are with that. Apparently I need laser hair removal. Good grief. Tropical Tidbits, great website. Gotta love some of these sponsorship ads. But give Levi a holler. He's got great videos every day. Here's Franklin here, getting ready to move into Texas. This is the European model. I'm sorry, that is Harold. I should know better. Texas always gets the H storms. Harvey, Hannah, Harold. This is Franklin down here, which formed before Harold did last night. And you can see the European says this is going to be a kind of weak sauce here when it moves through Hispaniola, and then we'll try to redevelop, but slowly here on Friday. Now you can see the gyre is actually spitting out another low pressure system. It's actually got two, one on the Pacific side, one on the Caribbean side, and this would be Friday evening. The European has been pretty consistent in taking a circulation up into the Southern Gulf next week. This is around this time next week, so Tuesday morning. And this is Franklin, and the European says, it's not going to hit the Outer Banks, but it is not that far off. It's actually well west of Bermuda, so keep an eye on that. We'll see if this trend continues. I don't think it will based on the upper level pattern, but what we do see is another tropical storm in the Southern Gulf of Mexico in 1 week. And it is strengthening over the very warm waters of the Gulf. They've been unscathed here all summer long, and water temperatures are running several degrees above average, and we're at the hottest time of the year between now and early September. So we may have, if conditions come together right, a quickly strengthening system here. This is next Wednesday night, and this is Thursday, showing a hurricane striking the panhandle of Florida. Again, this is one model. I don't see it on every model, and this is still 8 to 9 days out. But the pattern certainly does indicate that if there is something, that it would head towards the Eastern Gulf or the southeastern United States. So keep an eye on that. This is Thursday night heading into Labor Day weekend. This model run of the European says it will be around. The model run before it says it's going to take longer to get going. It will actually be in the Southern Gulf and be more of a problem towards Labor Day weekend proper versus coming in before then. The model run before that was weaker and had it more in the Western Gulf, but the trend has been farther to the east again. So that's what we're going to be watching for you guys. All right, I'm not going to worry about this stupid little invest here. Here's a look at the ensembles, though. Let me set these into motion for you guys. And you will see Harold's already moved away. This is Franklin. This is Gert. This is Emily. This is something else. I don't even know. This is the next disturbance. And then this is the area that I'm going to be watching for you guys here near Central America. This is going to be tomorrow. And you will see, generally speaking, two low pressure systems coming out of it. One staying on the Mexican Riviera side in the Pacific, and the other moving up towards the Yucatan Peninsula here over the weekend. By the way, this system coming off of the Cape Verde region, it does develop, but not a lot. These are all showing a tropical depression. Gert's dead. Emily may try to re-strengthen into a weak system. And then here's Franklin, which is turning to the north and east, passing north of Puerto Rico here on Saturday night. Here's a look at early next week. You can see that turn back to the west, back to the north-northwest. This is Bermuda here, so mostly west of Bermuda, some even aimed more at the southeast coast. And then here is our system, which all of the ensembles show moving into the southern Gulf of Mexico next Monday or Tuesday. A lot of uncertainty, as you could imagine, anywhere from the Bay of Campeche over towards Florida, but more than not showing central and eastern Gulf Coast here next Wednesday and Thursday. This is Franklin, and it's already recurving and heading towards potentially Nova Scotia. As we get later into the week, that will bend very quickly to the right, either landfall near Nova Scotia and Newfoundland or just to the south. Here's a look at the Gulf of Mexico, and I'm actually going to zoom in on that. And then here's our next disturbance coming off of Africa, and that one might be Jose. Here's a look, though, closer in, and you can see, if I zoomed into Florida, you can see quite a few models showing a system coming up here. This is Monday into Tuesday, and again, until something forms, we're going to see a lot of disorganization in where the models show it. But the general feeling is that Florida's the biggest state, and the upper level pattern favors something heading towards Florida. And this would be the second part of next week. Louisiana, keep an eye on it. Mississippi, Alabama, keep an eye on it. But more than likely, Florida, this would be bad. This is Baton Rouge, a Category 4 hurricane coming up next Thursday into Friday. But that's just one ensemble. The majority say it's going to be Florida or even coming through just east of Florida. Here's a look at the GFS model, and it does not really develop our gyre. The GFS, in my opinion, has not been doing great this summer. So I'm not really putting a lot of faith in it at this point. It actually shows the next system coming down through the Windward Islands here on Labor Day into the Caribbean. I don't think that's going to be the case, just to be honest with you guys, but we'll watch it. On the Canadian, we see our gyre coming up and two low pressure systems, one here and one here early next week. And the Canadian does show something aimed at the Panhandle or the west coast of Florida next Wednesday night and Thursday. It does have it weaker, though, than the European. And then here is the European model, which I did show you guys a little bit, but again, shows our low pressure forming in the sweet spot here in the Gulf and heading northeast towards Florida and Georgia towards next Wednesday night and Thursday. Looking at the East Coast here, the GFS has Harold getting really strong. I think this is too strong, and passing west of Bermuda and then turning to the right of Nova Scotia and out of the picture by next Wednesday. You can see this big trough dumping down some cooler, drier air into the eastern U.S. towards the middle of next week. That's going to feel great for those of you heading to the beaches in New England this upcoming holiday weekend. You can see it shows a general trough in between this and the ridge off to the west, and that would open things up in the eastern United States for potential action over Labor Day weekend. The Canadian model, which you can see on here, is much weaker with Harold. It does have a hurricane. It's closer to Bermuda than North Carolina, and turns it away to the south and east of Nova Scotia, which I think is going to be more likely the path of the system. Yes, we do need to watch it in New England. We do need to watch it in the Outer Banks, and we do certainly need to watch it in Nova Scotia, but I think this model is going to end up being more correct, taking things away from Canada. Here's the next system, by the way, actually, and maybe a second one, and this is next Thursday with landfall in Florida, but this will be weaker. Could bring a lot of rain up into Florida, though, and eventually into the southeast for Labor Day weekend. So if you're heading to the Carolina beaches, definitely keep a closer eye on the forecast here for next weekend, as rain certainly looks like a possibility here. A certain possibility. I love my English. Here's a European, much weaker with Harold. Maybe that's right based on what we've seen here. Maybe it's only a tropical storm or low-end hurricane. But again, curving away from Canada, the dry air takes over here. Here's the bigger concern, potential Idalia here moving into the Panhandle Thursday. And again, this will probably shift. So the timing could change on it. And here's a look at the U.S. Death Ridge in place, building northward into Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Illinois. We're going to see extreme amounts of heat here right on through about Thursday, and then the cold front drops in Friday. This is the moisture left over from Hillary. The upper low is spinning near Sacramento, California. Here's another upper low moving into Washington. It's taking all that tropical moisture up into Arizona and Utah today. It's going to bring it all the way into the upper Midwest here, the Great Lakes region over the next couple of days. And eventually New England's going to see some remnant moisture indirectly associated with Hillary, which hit California. Farther in the Atlantic, the GFS, this is Emily, I think, which is pretty much going to be dead. This is the next system, no longer really developing it into a tropical storm and killing it off, which I think is likely. A couple more waves to keep an eye on, and it's developing the southern system very quickly, whereas the other systems behind it are not developing. But that's just one run of the GFS. The Canadian, on the other hand, says this system here will be a depression. That's 92L, and then it's going to die. The next system will not be a hurricane. It'll be weak, just like that one, and then a bigger one may come off after that. That is what I think could end up being the case, but we'll see. And the European says the remains of Emily get absorbed by this trough here. This system does not really develop into anything substantial, and things are still pretty quiet, although we see waves that come off, one of which could develop. So the GFS is taking some shots at certain waves, whereas the European's taking shots at different waves. That's what we see right now. Here's the upper level pattern. Death Ridge in place over Missouri and Iowa today. That is protecting much of the United States from anything tropical except for South Texas, where things come up and underneath, and that is not unusual for August. As we get on into the end of the week, we see a big trough dropping down into the eastern United States. That's what's going to induce Harold to come up more to the northwest, but the good news is that that trough is going to turn away and push Harold away from the coast and back out to sea. But it is also going to dig down into the southern United States and weaken our ridge. And that is going to allow a path for something to come up through the Gulf of Mexico here towards the middle and second part of next week before our ridge of high pressure rebuilds over the Gulf Labor Day weekend. So if something forms, it'll be probably before Labor Day weekend, and then probably turning away before we've got another big ridge of high pressure building into the northeast, where temperatures could be pretty hot as we start to the month of September. Here's the climate forecast system. And again, we see this ridge backing off, trough of low pressure here off the east coast, turning away Franklin, trough digging back down, leaving a piece behind in the southeast, which would allow something to come up through the Gulf of Mexico right into that weakness, then rebuilding high pressure over the eastern U.S. on Labor Day weekend. But as we get on into the following week, we see ridge of high pressure over eastern Canada and weaknesses over the southeast. And what this could mean is as we get into the second and third weeks of September, with this ridge in place over Atlantic Canada, we now have to keep an eye on the east coast of the United States for potential tropical mischief around the 15th of September. So stay tuned on that one. We won't know for sure, of course, with this being 4 weeks away, but that is what the pattern at least is trending towards. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. I will have pretty much daily videos. I will probably take Sunday off. But as always, I thank you for your time. I cannot do this, though, without my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I give God all the glory every day for allowing me to wake up, for being a strong person, for getting on early in the day, 5 in the morning, comes pretty early, and for keeping me encouraged and showing me that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We are all struggling, folks. I realize that. It's a very difficult time to be around the world today, but there is mercy coming from God. Psalm 103:17 says, "But the mercy of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting upon them that fear him, and his righteousness unto children's children, to keep as such his covenant, and to those that remember his commandments to do them. The Lord hath prepared his throne in the heavens, and his kingdom ruleth over all. Bless the Lord, ye his angels that excel in strength, that do his commandments, hearkening unto the voice of his word. Bless ye the Lord, all ye his hosts, ye ministers of his, to do his pleasure. Bless the Lord, all his works, in all places of his dominion. Bless the Lord, O my soul." We all are given a gift from God. Mine happens to be being a meteorologist, being weather safety. Others may be completely different. There's teachers out there, there's lawyers, doctors. Everybody's been given a gift by God. We've all been created by God, but not everybody has accepted the challenge to accept God through Jesus Christ and be called to something greater. This verse says that to keep the Lord's covenant, there is a throne in the heavens, and the Lord's kingdom is going to rule over all. Even though we may see that that is a struggle here on earth, know that in the heavenly kingdom, we are all granted that strength, and we can be the Lord's angels. I accepted that gift 10 years ago as a Christian. A lot of folks haven't yet, but there is still hope. And I pray and hope that you are one of those people that will accept Jesus Christ as your Savior, knowing that the Lord will bless you in many ways and give you eternal life. He has prepared that throne in the heavens for you. His kingdom rules over all, and darkness goes away when you accept the Lord. Don't lean on your own understanding, but lean on the Lord's. I know that's something that has really encouraged me, and I pray that it encourages you as well. And obviously, I will keep a very close eye on the tropics here. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. Have a God blessed day, and see you again in the morning. Take care.